but it's a long read. And this way you can listen, right? But you're not allowed to fall asleep. That's the rule. The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 11th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was ill, so the sisters sent a message to Jesus. Lord, he who you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, this illness does not lead to death, but rather is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Accordingly, though Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, after having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now trying to stone you, and are you going there again? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? Those who walk during the day do not stumble, because they see the light of this world. Those who walk at night stumble, because the light is not in them. After saying this, he told them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to awaken him. The disciples said to him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will be all right. Jesus, however, had been speaking about his death. But they thought he was referring merely to sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. For your sake, I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Thomas, who was called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away. And many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, the teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly stirred in spirit and deeply moved. He said, where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he open the eyes of the blind man, have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, did I not tell you that if you believe, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Many of the Jews there who had come with Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. This is the gospel of our Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
I forgot that you all didn't see my first cane. That was last week when I wasn't here. But my first cane was purple flowers. It was quite Lenten appropriate, but not quite my style. But I was appreciative. So today's sermon is a little different. It's a conversation among the 4 people that we have heard from that have met Jesus these past 4 weeks. Jesus, in meeting each of these people the last 4 weeks, has given new life to each of these people in some way. Jesus was talking to Nicodemus, a woman from Samaria, the man born blind. Today we hear about Lazarus. In each of their lives, Jesus enters and changes them drastically. Their lives take dramatic turns. They move from focusing on themselves to focusing on Jesus, which is what life discipleship is to be about, and what our focus is during life. And all around. So in our conversation today, these 4 talk about the changes they have undergone because of their meetings with Jesus. Now understand, this isn't scripture. This is my take of what they might have said after meeting Jesus. Begin with the man born blind. You've always been able to see. It's hard to tell you what it's been like for me. I have never known the sunrise, never seen a tree, never seen my wife smile. My children had only been a shape, a texture, a sound to me. I had a good sense of my world. I knew what it sounded like. I knew what it felt like. I even knew what it smelled like. But I never knew how much I was missing. To see colors, to see people, to see my family. It's so much more wonderful than I had ever dreamed. I guess in a backwards kind of way, it's like not missing water until the well runs dry. I didn't have any idea how much I was missing until I could see it for the very first time. There are things I never dreamed of. The color of the sky, the movements of the clouds. I thought I knew my world, but I see now that I'm only just beginning to understand how big, how varied and colorful, how wonderful it really is. But what is even more amazing is that I not only see with my eyes now, which is most glorious, but in view of this other sight, it is but a mere pittance. I now see with the Spirit that has flowed over me since I met Jesus. The Samaritan woman. It's funny that you mentioned water. It was at Jacob's well that I met him. I never liked going to the well. My life has been hard, and most of the people in town seem to take great pleasure in picking on me, making sure that I know that they think they are so much better than I am. I know they aren't, but even though they act like it, but it gets hard to take. Always being on the outside. I had gotten in the habit of going to the well at noon when no one else was there, just so I wouldn't have to meet anybody. But here he was, in the heat of the noonday sun. I tried to ignore him, but he spoke to me. At first I was scared, but then I realized he wanted only friendship. He treated me like I was important, like I really mattered. I never felt anything quite like it. Suddenly I was somebody. Even in the heat of the day, I felt so refreshed and alive. I always take a drink before I carry the water back to my house, but it never made me feel as good as his words did. It was like some kind of super high-powered water, more refreshing than anything I've ever known. I forgot my pail. I realized now I had no need of it anymore. Jesus had filled me full and continues to do so. Nicodemus. I envy your clear sense of what he gave to you. I went to talk with him one night and came away very confused. He spoke to me about a new kind of birth, a birth from above. I've been wondering about it ever since. Didn't make any sense, really. I'd always thought that as Pharisees, we were pretty sure of our way of worshiping God and living our lives, but he made me think in a new way. The life he talked about was so new, it seemed to be open to everybody. He had never met me before, yet he invited me to take part in it also. We've always believed that a person had to follow certain rules, behave in certain ways, follow all the laws and codes and regulations in order to be welcomed by God. But he talked about everyone who believed in him having eternal life. It's a whole new way of seeing things. I guess if it really is that way, it would be like being born a second time. Everything would be that new. I don't have any idea what a newborn baby feels like. I doubt if any of us remember that far back. The kind of life he was talking about must have that same kind of newness. I still don't understand it, but I really want to learn more about it. Lazarus. I remember that day so well. How could I forget it? I remember the sickness before, getting worse and worse, and then it finally ended. It was like going to sleep, and then I had no pain. But what I remember next was so strange, I wrote it down. It's dark in here. I thought I heard someone call my name. Why is he calling me? I'm dead, or was. 4 days dead. I stayed. What could he want with me? I'm afraid to live again. Dead, I did not feel the pain. Dead, I did not know the dark. Dead, I could not feel the cloth stretched across my face. Dead, I did not know myself confined, wrapped hand and foot, sewn sealed inside this tomb. Dead, I could not smell this putrid reek, my own decaying self. He calls. I live. I must stand up and walk, and I stumble towards the light. And now I am alive again. Truly, as my sister said, this man is the Messiah, the Son of God. The man born blind. I agree, he can be no one else, and I believe in him with all my heart. But I found out that this is not a good way to become popular. I've been grilled by the Pharisees a few times over what happened, and they even raked my parents over the coals. Then, as if that were enough, they actually kicked me out of the synagogue forever, once I said that I believe Jesus really is the Messiah. Even though I've only seen the last few days, that synagogue has been the center of my whole life. When I begged, I was always there. I got to know the sounds and the smells of the place. I even got to know some of the priests. All my family are part of the life there. And now I can't go anywhere near it. I become able to see all right. And I praise God for this amazing gift of sight. I see that it was Jesus, the Son of God, who gave me my sight and set me free from my prison of blindness. But I now know that being able to see has a price. Just about everything I thought was important to me has been taken away. But the one thing I didn't have, my sight and my understanding, that has been given to me. The price is high, but I will gladly pay it. For me, seeing really is believing. I see the world around me. Because I see, I believe Jesus is the Christ. This has become the focus of my whole life now. The Samaritan woman. I know what you mean about paying the price. I had managed to build my life so that I lived very quietly, hardly noticed by anyone. I kept out of everyone's way, like going to the well at noon. And people didn't bother me nearly as much as they used to. But I just couldn't keep quiet about how I felt after he talked to me. I just had to tell people. My quiet life is gone for good now. It seems every time I turn around, someone else is asking me about the stories they heard about me and Jesus. And I tell them yet another time. It really isn't like me. I don't like being in crowds all the time and talking and explaining things to people. But it doesn't seem like I can do anything else. He gave me so much. A sense of who I am, some self-confidence, and most of all, a feeling that he really cared about me. That I would be willing to change whatever I have to in my life to tell anybody who will listen how Jesus is the one who gave it to me, how he really is the Son of God. But now that I have this new life, it seems the Pharisees are all the more anxious to take it away from me again. They seem to think that I'm causing a lot of trouble just by walking around and talking about what Jesus did. So I'm starting to hear rumors that they are out to kill me. There's just no way I would ever deny that it was Jesus who gave me new life. And I'll keep right on talking about it. But it sure is a different kind of life. Now it's all focused on Jesus and what he has taught. And I find that that is not always very popular. Nicodemus. Hearing each of you talk helps me understand more of what he said to me. You are all the same people, but you are leading really new lives since you met Jesus. I guess there is more than one way to be born anew. I feel like that is starting to happen with me as well. I'm not so bold and brave as you are. I haven't come to believe in Jesus so completely or tell the world about it, but I can't stop thinking about the questions he has raised about how I am living. I'm thinking more and more that he is right. The way he offers is the right one. I've started trying to suggest gently, to be sure, in the Sanhedrin, that maybe we should give Jesus a little bit more room. Maybe we should listen to him more carefully and not condemn him so quickly. My suggestions are not well received. My friends are speaking to me less and less these days, and I'm picking up on rumors that several members of the Sanhedrin are out to get me. What surprises me is that I'm willing to risk all of that. I really want to know more about Jesus, to learn more of his way and this new birth he spoke to me about. I've tried to ignore it, but I just can't. I'm going to have to figure out I'm going to have to keep focusing on Jesus. And if that bothers some of my friends, they will just have to stay bothered. I'm beginning to realize that this is just too important. In each of these stories, Jesus walks into these people's lives and changes their perspectives, even though he does so differently for each person. Nicodemus receives questions to ponder, and Nicodemus is a good ponderer. The Samaritan woman receives prophecy and living water, and the Samaritan woman is great at pouring out that water for all. The blind man receives his sight, and the blind man can now see in more than one way. And today Lazarus receives life anew. And Lazarus' walking around causes quite a stir. It's a proclamation of who Jesus is every single day. Each person now has a dramatic story to tell. Their lives changed by their interactions with Jesus. Each of them knows for certain that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God. As we allow God to interact with us, he will change our lives as well, giving us stories to share, questions to ponder, and the certainty that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that knowledge will change your life.